Hey guys, it's Dr. Hayes, and this video is all about fairy tale retellings for little kids, specifically modern fairy tale retellings that are geared toward children. And so in the last video that came before this in the series, I talked about sort of modern fairy updates of fairy tales that are made for older readers, adults and teenagers. And so this one is going to be focusing on like picture books, pretty much just picture books. I have a couple other books that are a little bit longer, and so, but mostly picture books and like story collections and things. So I have some. If I went through all of the picture books based on fairy tales that I have, this video would be 8 hours long. So I'm not gonna do that to you. So I've selected some that are pretty unique. I think they're kind of interesting looks. They have sort of a neat take on the fairy tale. And so I've divided them out into stacks of a few examples of each kind of each tale. I'm not going to go over every tale that exists. I've picked some of the big ones. Since we're doing Beauty and the Beast for this fairy tales unit, I have some retellings of Beauty and the Beast. And I have Cinderella, of course, because it's the most retold tale that exists as established by scholarship. We talked about that in the class. I have a couple of interesting ones of Snow White and Sleeping Beauty. And then I have Hansel and Gretel. And then I'm also going to show you the Stinky Cheese Man just because it's adorable. It's one of my favorite. It's pretty much my favorite picture book. So I'll start with Beauty and the Beast since that's what our unit was about. And that's the oldest. The Cupid and Psyche tale is the oldest literary fairy tale that we have in existence. So I'll start with some retellings of Beauty and the Beast. And then we'll move on from there. So I have a stack here. I thought I would show you just kind of some straightforward, pretty ones. And then I have a couple that are just interesting. So let's see. I thought this one was interesting. I know it says Goldilocks on the front, but you can see it has Beauty and the Beast there on the front too. So this is Goldilocks and Other Fairy Tales. So whenever I look in a book, I always like to see which version it's being based on. So just to kind of back up a little bit, this actually reminds me, in class we were talking about how there's a cycle. There's been sort of an age cycle with fairy tales where they started out as not for children. They were tales in the oral tradition. They were, if they were written down, it was for an adult audience. Books really weren't written for children until much later, until after fairy tales had been established as a storytelling medium and genre. So what we consider to be fairy tales, they weren't really meant for children to read, and specifically. And so a lot of them had content that wasn't what we would call from a modern viewpoint, child appropriate, or even like something that a child would care about or understand. And many of them had morals and lessons that were geared for an older person. And then remember we talked about after the Grimm's collection of tales in the early 1800s, 1812 was when their first volume came out. It started being really popular with, nannies would read it to their children and governesses would, read it to their students and stuff. Then they were like, oh, kids like these. And so really up into the mid 1800s is when fairy tales were sort of taken over for like the nursery, like children. And remember we talked about Andrew Lang with his colored fairy books, the blue fairy book and the red fairy book and all those in the late 1800s. So for the most part, after the Grimms, the fairy tales kind of became relegated to the nursery, and it was more something that was thought of as young children would read that. It was too fanciful. Sophisticated people wouldn't read something like that. And the types of fairy tales that were being published were just collections of classic tales, retellings of the Grimm version, retellings of Perrault's version, retellings of Andrew Lang's version. But it would just be like picture books or little illustrated books or reprinted in magazines, and it would just be the sort of the classic versions reprinted and rebound in pretty editions. Well, then, recall, in class we talked about, Tolkien gave his famous On Fairy Story speech, and he and C.S. Lewis and around in the world around World War II and after were publishing fantasy stories for adults, and it kind of became reclaimed, I guess you could say, as something that would be perfectly acceptable for an adult to read, and it's an art form that an adult author could play with. And so when children's literature and as a offshoot fairy tale scholarship started to burgeon in the 1970s with the dawn of children's literature in academia in the 1970s, and with the retellings by Angela Carter and people like that, Robin McKinley, starting in the 1970s and 80s and going forward, fairy tales were sort of reclaimed. There were, as I talked about in the last video, there were more and more retellings that were meant for adults and older readers. Well, what happened with the fairy tale retellings that are geared toward young children is that authors began to feel the comfort and the freedom to start experiment. We've got plenty of versions of the classic tales. We don't need really many more collections like that, unless a different artist has a different spin on it or something. But what really started happening, especially in the 70s and 80s and 90s, artists and authors, picture book authors, were getting really experimental. They would change things up and add comedic elements and rename some of the characters and set them in modern times and things like that. So those are the kinds of books I'm going to show you mostly today. I'll have at least one or two classic versions just to kind of give you an idea of what they look like, how children are exposed to these sort of tales in their classic form. And I always look to see which version it is. If it's like one that's been inspired by the Disney story, or if it's one that's from the classic literary versions, or the Grimms or Andrew Lang's, or which one is it? And a lot of times the book will say adapted from the original tale by Madame Le Prince de Beaumont. It'll say something like that. If it's not one that's based on not one specifically, it'll usually say who it is. So I like to kind of see who that is. So I wanted to give you a little bit of a background as to how we got where we are with various kinds of imaginings and retellings. And a lot of these stories belong to the public domain. Like, there's no copyright for them. Nobody owns them. So really anybody can do any version they want. As long as you're not copying the Disney version, and then you'll probably get in trouble. So anyway, this collection, Goldilocks and Other Fairy Tales, it has a story of Beauty and the Beast. And I was noticing it is based on the de Beaumont Beauty and the Beast, because it starts out, long ago there lived a rich merchant who had 3 sons and 3 daughters. And it goes through the version where he has 6 kids and his ship is lost, but then it's found, and he picks the flower. And there he looks kind of like a gargoyle, kind of, I guess. But I wanted to say there's one difference at the end. He doesn't really look that much different as a prince. But there's one difference at the end where, remember we talked in class, this story, especially de Beaumont's version, it's not about love. It's about companionship and admiration and appreciation for his generosity and things like that. And there's no kiss or anything. Well, in this one, it's based on the de Beaumont one, but at the ending, she says, "Oh, Beast," she cried, "I did not mean to stay away so long. Please come back to me. You are so good and kind." Then she kissed him. So that is definitely an edit that's been added into this one, because it's expected at this point. It's expected that a spell is broken with true love's kiss, right? Then the Beast transformed. And he says, the only way it could be broken was if a girl who loved me kissed me in spite of my ugliness. That's not how the spell was broken. The original spell was broken if someone would agree to marry him and be with him. Beauty kissed him again and vowed that she would stay by his side forever. She still never says, I love you. She still never says anything about being in love with him. She says, you are so good and kind, kisses him, and then he says, kissed by a girl who loves me, and she kissed him again and vowed she'd stay by his side. She never says she loves him, but I guess her kiss says that. Anyway, I found this version, and I thought that was an interesting little edit that they added in there. Let's see. I have this really pretty version. It's a cutout, and I don't know if it's going to translate on the video, but there's like little holes that like cut out in it. And so it works really neat. Like you can kind of see there's a little owl up here in the hole. So when it opens, there are, like this is lattice work that you can kind of see through. So when you open it, like you're on the outside of the palace and then you can be on the inside. And the holes kind of work together. You can there's a hole right here and there's holes in the windows. But then when you open it, you can see what was on the inside. Oh, and this is neat. There's a hole right here, and it covers up it makes his portrait on the wall over here. This one's fun too. So this is a hole. This whole lattice work is a hole, and she's inside her room, and that's her balcony. Then when you open it, it's on the balcony, and you can see inside the room through the lattice work. This is cute. Look, the beast is kind of like hiding right there. And then there he is. Hello. So he's hiding behind the bush, and then he comes out to see her on the balcony. And this one, I'm trying to see where the hole is. Oh, yeah. It's right here. So she's daydreaming about the beast. He's right there. And then when you open it, he's there. And because she dreams about him, and then she goes to find him. This is really cute. See how this is sort of shaped? When you open the flap, it makes a heart, and he's transformed. And the hole sort of strategically is hidden by this flower that is this bush right here. It's drawn so it like sort of blends in. Isn't that clever? So I love these peek inside. I have one of Cinderella too. I have another one that's very similar. This one's usually in my office up on the shelf, but I brought it home to put in the video. So this is sort of a cut. This is paper. I don't know if you can see. This black is paper. It's really delicate. It's about to, but so all through the middle. This is based on the de Beaumont one, but it has these cutouts, these cutout pages of paper through the middle. See, there's the father's ship, and you can flip it over, and it makes different scenes. So it's like cutouts. Here's one. It's just really intricate. And it shows them going to their thing. There's one that works well. And then in between each page, there's like the story. Oh yeah, this is a good cutout. Some of them, oh yeah. Some of them are just mirror images. So this is where the beast is watching the father pluck the rose. And then when you turn the page, he's like in front of him, like, you plucked my rose. That one works really well, the cutout. Like I said, some of them are just like, opposites. So this is them dancing. Let me see. That one's pretty, of them dancing. Here's one, I guess. She's on the stairs and she's kind of talking with her father. And then when you turn the page, she's talking with her sisters. So anyway, this is really pretty. I got this at Barnes & Noble. I think it's the Barnes & Noble edition of the book. It's really cool. The new live action Disney Beauty and the Beast. They have a whole bunch of books that I got. I mean, this isn't all of them. But there's an easy reader with like pictures from the movie in it, and this is like a coloring imagination type. Like it gives you little prompts and tells you to draw. This is the Entertainment Weekly, the special edition. Beauty and the Beast. Entertainment Weekly. So I've collected a few. I was a big fan. So I was going to show you that those kinds of things exist. Then there's this one that's real weird. This is one of my favorites. It's so bizarre. It's kind of got some like Tiger's Bride vibes going on. Cause he looks like a cat, on there. So I just think it's so interesting, the choice. And Beauty, like, so her father, he looks like a Quaker minister or something. Like, I'm not really sure the time period and the aesthetic that they've gone with. But look at that. It's like kind of scary. Like the Beast is a cat. There's one that's like, I'm trying to find one that's like real good. Oh. There we go. Where he's laying there, she's, I'll be with you forever. This one, she says, "Don't die, I can't live without you. I love you. Please say we can be married." She bent down and kissed him. So they've sort of edited the content on that one. I also have this collection I was going to show you. There's 2 volumes of this, The Other Side of the Story. And it usually tells fairy tales from a different perspective. And so this one has one of the Beauty and the Beast, but it's from the Beast's perspective. I won't go all through it. There's 2 collections of these that have all different kind of tales. Like there's the Frog Prince from the frog's point of view. There's Rapunzel from Mother Gothel's point of view. Sleeping Beauty from, I think, one of the fairies. Yeah, the evil fairy's point of view. So those are kind of neat. To transition out of the Beauty and the Beast stack, I have these really cool books from, they're sponsored by Disney. I got them at Barnes & Noble. So I wish you could feel them. They're real, like the cover's real like velvety almost, like not slick. So the covers, they are told, you can't really see, but it says The Beast Within right there. And so it's basically the villain's side of the story. It's basically a retelling of the Disney versions of these movies from the villain's point of view. It's really cool. But one of the cool part about these books is when you take the slipcover off, their transformed version is on the inside. So there's Prince Adam, I think is what his name is, Beauty and the Beast, on the inside. And then there's the Ursula one, Poor Unfortunate Soul. And when you take this off, it's the girl she transforms into underneath. I just love these. They're so cool. And then you've got Fairest of All, Snow White. And she's the evil witch underneath, who she transforms into. And then the last one I have, this one's actually a signed copy by the author has signed it. It's pretty cool. It is Maleficent, Mistress of All Evil. And then underneath, it's the dragon that she turns into in the cartoon, in the Disney cartoon. So that's a pretty cool set. So let's talk about Snow White next. So sort of couple classic versions. The Candlewick Book of Fairy Tales is a classic collection. I also really like it because the author is my name, Sarah Hayes, except it's spelled backwards. My name doesn't have an H. Sarah doesn't have an H, and Hayes doesn't have an E. But this has Sarah with an H and Hayes with an E. But otherwise, it's my name. But I was just going to show you like maybe one. What are we doing, Snow White? Okay, so let me go to that one. That's the one that's on the cover. So this is sort of a classic image. It's on the cover too of the Queen. I know the lighting is not the best in here because it's dark. It's better when I record these during the day when there's sunlight. But I didn't have time for that. There's one other image. Oh, this is something that's frequently shown with Snow White is the evil queen doing magic. You can kind of see her in her lair and she's doing spell books and stuff. And so a lot of times the image of the evil queen actually performing magic and doing magic is... It's kind of a powerful image where this, you know, this evil villain, this villainess, and she's not just flying off the handle. She's not attacking. It's a calculated move. She has a skill. Like, she has a skill that she has developed and honed over the years, and she's using it. And so it's some sort of modern, maybe feminist critics sort of interpret that as it's problematic that the villain is a powerful woman who has knowledge and skill, and you know that's a threat, right? So a lot of modern versions of Snow White will make sure to show her, like the evil queen, actually in her lab, like doing the magic and making the apples and everything, because it's showing that she's an educated woman. She has a skill. She's good at what she does. She's not just a crazy person. This is another sort of classic version of Snow White. I just wanted to show it to you because we were talking about in class how, you know, there is no kiss, and he doesn't kiss her awake. And this one is based on the classic version where the dwarves are carrying her coffin, right? She's dead there. That's her head. And so the dwarves are carrying her through the woods, and the prince sees her. He's like, she's so beautiful. You have to let me have her so that I can always look at her. And they're like, no. But they say no, but the prince grew so sad, the dwarves felt sorry for him, and at last they agreed. So he begs. He's like, please. So they give her to him. But it's the classic thing where the glass coffin falls and they trip, and the poison apple comes out of her throat, and she opens her eyes. Where am I? She cried. You are safe with me, said the prince, and he told her all that happened. Come with me and be my wife. I will, said Snow White. And they rode off together to the prince's palace. Like, first time she ever sees the dude, she's like, what happened? I saved you. I wasn't obsessed with your dead body. I swear, I saved you. Come be my wife. Okay. Very, it's, yeah. And so, do they have the queen dance to death? No, they changed it. So, in the classic versions of this tale, the queen, at their wedding, at Snow White's wedding, they make the queen put on smoking shoes, like red hot shoes. And I think this one has that. They make the queen put on red hot shoes and dance to death at the wedding in the red hot shoes. This one just says when she saw the Snow White and the prince at the wedding, she says she choked with rage and fell dead on the floor. That's not what happened. So this one has been sort of scrubbed and edited for a young audience. This one, yeah. So do you see? It says, the queen stormed off to the wedding. When she saw that the bride was none other than Snow White, she was transfixed with fury, unable to move. 2 iron shoes were heated till they were red hot, and the wicked queen was made to put them on and dance until she dropped down dead. And so the picture is her. She's got her little hand like, and her feet are smoking. It's a little more gruesome. That's this one. That's a little more gruesome than she choked and died. Hey, but I admire that Snow White version for making her die. This is a cool one. This is one of those 5-minute story times I was telling you about that I had one of Wizard of Oz in class. And they're so cute. So this one says The Brothers Grimm right here. So that's, you can tell that's the one it's sort of inspired by. And so it's set, and they're kind of cartoony and modern. And so the the language, I'm just going to read you a little bit of it. Snow White was really cool. So was her dad. Like, that's how this ends. Unfortunately, not everyone can be so cool, it says. And then it goes into the evil queen. It says, the queen would look in her hand mirror and say, "Mirror, mirror in my hand, am I the prettiest in this land?" And the mirror would always say, "Yep." Until one day it said, "Nope." And so she, I'm not gonna read the whole thing, but she went to the dwarves with 7 really cool dwarfs who became her best friends. So she is with the dwarf. The queen kept asking, and it was saying nope. And so she gets in her a disguise, and she says, then she ran back home to talk to her mirror again, because that is what crazy queens do. Oh, that cracks me up. So then the dwarfs got home. She gave her the apple. The dwarfs got home. They found Snow White and knew she was choking, so they worked together to help her dislodge the apple. Snow White snapped right out of it. That is not how this ends. That's some revisionist writing there, that they worked together to help her and unchoke. So then, Snow White was a cool lady, but trying to choke her was too much. She was done with this queen. She marched straight home, told her dad what happened, and helped him move the queen out of the castle into the forest, where she was ordered to live from that day forward. So they move her out. And so she goes and lives with the, says the queen wasn't what you'd call forest material. So she goes to live with the dwarves, and they teach her how to cook and clean. And it says the queen got used to it and even learned to like it. So she did not dance to death in her shoes. She goes and lives with the dwarves and learns to cook and clean and like it. That's funny. This version of Snow White is really pretty. Snow White in New York. And it is like a jazz era look. It has sort of this Art Deco sort of art style. And she's a sort of a renowned jazz singer. And the evil queen is her stepmom, because her stepmom used to be the sort of debutante, sort of the queen of the New York social scene, and then Snow White comes along and was sort of deemed the belle of New York. And so this is Snow White, and that's the stepmom. So they have this sort of jazz cabaret looking style to them. This is her, and so her jazz band are the dwarves, the 7 jazz men. So she's a singer, and then the dwarves are her band. So that's kind of a cool. So then the prince, who is a I guess he's the one who's obsessed with her. No. Yeah, maybe so. Anyway, there is a reporter that comes and sees her and writes an article about him, and he writes for a newspaper called The Mirror. And so there's this really cool thing about The Mirror, this newspaper, talking about how Snow White is the prettiest and coolest, at the thing. So the evil queen makes a poisoned martini to give to her, and that's sort of the poison. So see, you can kind of see she has a skull ring, and the sort of poisoned cherry in the martini, and that's how she poisons her, is with her drink. So then she is paraded through the street in this sort of glass-sided hearse, to kind of fit with the story. So then they bumped it, and then, yeah, so then the reporter is the prince. So see here, she's kind of like blue and dead, and then they drop it, and it pops out, and she comes alive again, and the reporter is the first person she sees, and they fall in love. So I think it's kind of neat. It's kind of a interesting retelling of Snow White with a cool art style, and yeah, like sort of a reimagining. And you might even say that one is geared more toward an older audience. I think kids would think the pictures were cool, especially girls probably would think, all the like the dresses and the makeup is pretty cool. But it's definitely showing a lot of these Snow White ones specifically are showing kind of the experimental nature, how some artists and picture book authors are getting sort of creative with it. So the last Snow White one I have is Schmo White and the Seven Dwarfs, and it's like a comedic retelling of Snow White, and I was just going to read a little bit, probably not all of it. It's from 1997 is when this is from. So this is what she looks like, right? And so it says, once upon a time, about 2:15, there was a lovely girl named Schmo White. She lived with her evil, rotten stepmother, the Wicked Queen. I love that. Once upon a time, about 2:15. And so this is what the evil queen looks like. And it talks about her putting on her fake eyelashes and wig and all that. And she has a mirror on her ceiling. Mirror, mirror on the ceiling, which lady is the most appealing? And so, so then this one has the huntsman in it. She hires the huntsman to go get her, and she says, "A huntsman, I have a job for you." "Okie dokie," said the huntsman, who was paid by the hour. That's funny. And so he goes, and when he finds her in the woods, he doesn't kill her. Like, that's the story. He doesn't kill her, but it says he took away her compass and trail mix and left her alone. That's unacceptable. So she gets to a college, and she saw 7 little dudes playing rock and roll. And so this is what the dwarves look like. There's, like, this guy back here has a green mohawk, and this one has, like, a purple mohawk and a backwards hat and a guitar. They're like a band. They play music. And so that's sort of the shtick of this one. And their names are Nerdy, Grouchy, Funky, Smiley, Wheezy, Drowsy, and Hip. And they're the dwarfs. And so they do a band, and she joins them, and they sing, and it's like a whole thing. And all the forest animals come. And let's see. That's probably... Oh, she's turned into a total forest hippie. She's got like a headband and her guitar. I think that's funny. I'm trying to see. Oh, yeah. So the way she's poisoned is through lipstick, because the evil queen's all about cosmetics. So she has, like, she puts on this like poison lipstick. So then the prince comes. This prince, and there's reporters like paparazzi, and the prince comes to kiss her awake, and then he dies. It says, and then the prince died. "Who's he? Why is he wearing pink lipstick?" asked Schmo. "He's a prince, and I think he's wearing drop dead red," said Smiley. "Well, I'll kiss him, and he'll probably wake up." She did, and he woke up, and then Schmo died again. So the prince kissed her, and she woke up, and then he died again. This went on so long that they gave up their singing careers. So they kept kissing each other awake over and over, because they kept killing each other with the lipstick. The 7 dwarfs broke up and started a baseball team with 7 shortstops. And then the evil queen enters this is kind of a dig, the new Miss New Jersey contest and placed second. Her mirror placed first. The end. So So she was in a beauty contest. They made a baseball team, and the prince and Schmo White just kissed each other forever because they kept killing each other. Let's move on. I'm going to show you a few versions of Hansel and Gretel, or Hansel and Gretel, if you say it in sort of the accent. Hansel and Gretel. So here's sort of a classic edition. This is a Caldecott Honor book. Paul Zelinsky is the illustrator. Hansel and Gretel. I'm trying to see where it's not a glare. You can see the reflection on it. There we go. So it's kind of really pretty art style. This was in, let me see if I can give you a date. 1998 is when this came out. So you can kind of see the art style. I wanted to show you this one picture. It was really cool. One of the things that you always look for in Hansel and Gretel retellings is the picture of the gingerbread house, and to see a picture, if they have a picture, how they represent Gretel pushing the witch into the oven, because that's gruesome. That's like a gruesome scene where Gretel pushes the witch into the oven and cooks her in her own oven. It's not really for kids, and so different versions for kids sort of scrub it clean in certain ways because they think it's a little bit too much for children. But this picture of the gingerbread house is absolutely gorgeous. I don't know if you can see it. Oh, there we go. You can see the colors. It's got like pancakes for shingles on the roof, and like little cookies as part of the roof. And look at them, they're like, yes! They're like running for it. So yeah, the house in this one is just gorgeous. This is how I appreciated this picture, because one of the classic things from Hansel and Gretel is that the witch is blind, and so she's reaching out to Hansel to see if he's fat yet to eat, and he sticks a bone through the cage and she feels it, and she's like, no, you're so skinny, and that's how he saves himself. And this is the image of her putting the witch in the oven. So you can kind of see the witch's scared face disappearing behind the door as Gretel pushes it closed. We didn't talk about Hansel and Gretel in class, so I'm not going to go too much into it, but I just wanted to show you these versions. This one is Hansel and Gretel, and Hansel and Gretel. Well, it's really Hansel and Gretel. I guess they made it a girl. Hansel and Gretel? I don't know. Ninja Chicks. I don't remember if that's a girl and a boy or not. But the house, I just wanted to show this part. It's a wolf who lives there, not a witch. And he wants the chickens to put in some chicken pot pie. And the house he uses to lure them is made out of cornbread. It's a cornbread house. And so the chickens want it. They get there. But then they, the way they save themselves is there's like lots of action fighting scenes. They, fight. Like, wah, wah. It's real exciting. That's like a loose retelling of Hansel and Gretel. This one is beautiful. Beautiful. It's stunning. I guess I'll put it that way. This is Hansel and Gretel. The text is by Neil Gaiman. Beloved nerd author Neil Gaiman wrote the text. And then this Lorenzo Matodi, I'm not sure how you say that, but it's got a cutout on the front that goes into the text. But the illustrations are just so striking. So let me find some good ones. So it's got text like this, just straight up text that Neil Gaiman wrote. And then in between, it's got these sort of dark, spooky illustrations. So this kind of begs the question of whether kids are meant to read this or not. There's a couple I was going to show. There's a lot of just them wandering through the woods. Like this one's this is the one I was going to show. So they're wandering through the woods, and then down here, you can see that's an axe, and then just kind of a face hiding, like one eye Oh, so a guy with an axe. This is the one with the gingerbread house, so it's kind of abstract. That's the house. So it's a real striking art style. I really like that one. Let me talk about, I was just going to show you this one cool version I have of Hans Christian Andersen's Little Mermaid. It's just really pretty. The art of it is really pretty. So I was going to just show a couple pictures from it. We talked a little bit, like very briefly, about Little Mermaid in class. Let's see if it would show, when it shows Ursula, that's kind of an interesting image. So this is Ursula. Her name's not Ursula, she's just the Sea Witch. So that's what the Sea Witch looks like in this one, and that's more like how Andersen describes her. She's like a really, really old mermaid lady, and she's not quite so nefarious and evil as Ursula is. She's just aging, but she's, you know, she's not necessarily this like monster like Ursula is. Actually, you know what? That might be her grandmother. Because she has a grandmother in the story as well. Now that I think of that, that might be her grandmother. But I know that Ursula, the witch, is not described as like this monster. She's more like an old mermaid. But this is her lair. So it's kind of scary. See, there's the mermaid swimming through. So anyway, that's just a pretty addition I wanted to show you. Okay, I want to move quickly. We can look at Sleeping Beauty. I just have a few of those, but I just recently got this. It's a Sleeping Beauty pop-up book. So the tale is pretty much the standard tale. Not much has changed, but the cool thing about it is that it's got these pop-up scenes right in it. And so that's the fairies at her birth, so you can kind of see the baby there in the bed, and that's the pop-up. Then it's got the scene where she's being cursed. Then the scene with the spindle. So I mean, even the basket is popping out. The dogs, so they're not as elaborate as some of the ones I've shown in class, but there's the prince arriving to see everybody asleep, and then there's her asleep in the bed, and he comes and, you know, wakes her up. So yeah, that was pretty. I was going to show you. We can't not talk about VeggieTales. They are known for retelling fairy tales. They have tons of these. The one I just picked out, Sweet Pea Beauty. And instead of Sleeping Beauty, it's Sweet Pea Beauty, right? And so this is kind of a recurring character in the VeggieTales world. Sweet Pea Beauty. So it's not really the story of Sleeping Beauty, it's just more like the character, and she's kind of like their princess character, which I thought was kind of interesting. They took the Sleeping Beauty character and made it sort of a recurring character in their stories. Jane Yolen, we've talked about her a lot. I've talked about her a couple different times in class. She wrote the Briar Rose Holocaust Sleeping Beauty retelling that I told you about in the last video for older readers, and she wrote the Curse of the 13th Fairy, The Snow in Summer. Yes, these fairy tale retellings. Well, this is one of hers, Sleeping Ugly. You can kind of see it and see this her nose, Sleeping Ugly. So this is a sort of a little bit of a comedic Sleeping Beauty. And Princess Miserella was the... So anyway, she's in the same kingdom in the middle of the woods lived a poor orphan named Plain Jane. So you have Plain Jane, and you have Princess Miserella, who is pretty on the outside but ugly on the inside, and then you have Plain Jane, who was ugly on the outside but pretty on the inside. I think you kind of see where this is going, right? So it's sort of a moralistic, updated retelling of Sleeping Beauty, but it's Sleeping Ugly instead. Yeah, there's one where they're both asleep. Miserella's asleep, Ugly's asleep, and the prince is like kissing everybody. There's like all these characters he's trying to kiss. Then I have Snoring Beauty, and it's about a dragon. Look at her lips. Her lipstick. I won't go too much into this one. I just thought it was cute because it reminds me of the dragon in Shrek. It's not. I mean, it's got the baby who's cursed and she turns into a dragon. It's like a whole thing. So they've kind of retold it. And so part of the curse is she was turned into a dragon. Again, I won't go too far into that, but I just thought it was kind of funny. Alright, let me show you some Cinderella. Okay, so Cinderella, as I had said, is one of the most commonly retold fairy tales. So I have several versions of it. I won't go into detail on all of them, but I wanted to show you just a few of them. So I have, let's see. So I have one of those peek inside books that I had like for Beauty and the Beast, but it's you know, cutouts, and it's pretty cool. This has the same thing where the cottage sort of opens and you can see inside of it, and they're there, and there's cutouts. This one's kind of neat. The she's transformed. You know, like the godmother comes and like poof, you know, in the smoke. So it's kind of a pretty. Oh, this one's neat. The pumpkin is right here, and she's standing there, and then when you flip it over, it's the carriage. And then when you flip this flap over, then she's there in her dress. So it's like a double flap book. It's pretty cool. I also have several that are sort of from different nationalities. This is the one tale that I have found that it seems like there are different versions for different nationalities represented. So I have a few of these that I was going to show you. I haven't really encountered this with other fairy tale retellings, especially for kids. Some of the ones for adults or for teens, you see this sometimes where they'll make, like in the Lunar Chronicles, Cinder, the Cinderella character is Chinese. You see that sometimes with retellings for older readers, but the ones for kids, Cinderella is the one I see the most where there are different retellings from different nationalities. So this one, Cinderella, it doesn't really say it's from another nationality, but the art style you can kind of see is sort of from Spain, almost Spanish. She's got the flower in her hair and sort of the can sort of flamenco dress. And so all throughout the art style of the architecture and of like her dress and the way the men are dressed, it looks kind of like it was set in Spain or a Spanish speaking culture. From the way the art style. But that's only in the art style. It's not in the storytelling at all, which I find interesting. I do have this one, Adelita, which is, it's called A Mexican Cinderella Story, and it's intentionally Hispanic story. Now, it's Tommy DePaula is the artist here and the author, and he makes all kinds of pictures from different cultures. He's he has Native American books, he has Italian ones, there's all kinds, but this one is intentionally set in Mexico, and like here's a good picture. You can kind of see, so when she's made over, like for the ball, she kind of has a Frida Kahlo kind of a look going on with the flowers in her hair and the wrap, and so that's, and you can see yeah, I love this guy, the mustache. But the aesthetic is very much, it's a Cinderella story, but it's set in Mexico. So we talked about in class how tales like this are indexed on the ATU index. Cinderella is ATU 500A, I think. And so any of these stories, even if they're set in another culture, or the art style's been updated, or like the characters have been transitioned over into some other plot or setting, if they still have those core elements of the tale type from the index, and they still fit, and they're still considered part of that Cinderella tale type, the ATU 500. And so that Cinderella is the one that's been sort of played with the most, I think, as far as people tinkering with it and different sort of updates. So that was one that looks like it was from Spain, one from Mexico. I have this one, the Korean Cinderella is what it's called, and so it's the style. Again, the tale type is the same, but the art style is meant to depict Korean culture. And the plot and elements from the plot go along with the Korean culture, but it's very gorgeous, sort of in a different way, in its own way. It's not cartoony at all. A lot of these retellings are very cartoony. This one is a little bit more realistic, with like the faces of the characters and things. You can kind of see. This one. Cinderella, an Islamic tale. So Cinderella in this one is Muslim, and she wears a hijab. She raps, and so the style is like that. All of the women in here rap. You can see here she's depicted on her praying on her prayer rug. See her. This is her sisters. She gets cinders on her dress, and her sisters are making fun of her. So a lot of the elements are exactly the same, except it is set in a Muslim household, and the dress and the all of that, the tasks, the things they say, the things they make fun of her, the carriage. Like, look at the carriage. It's kind of like a caravan style. With like sort of the drapery, instead of, say, a pumpkin, like a carriage, a ball carriage. It's not like that. So it's been updated. See, I'm trying to look at, here. I don't know if you can kind of see it, but the slipper is silver, and so you can see the reflection. It kind of is reflecting. It's like it's silver on the page. So that's a neat little element. So that one's... Yeah, okay, so I had a Islamic one, a Korean one, a Mexican one, a Spanish one. So then I have a couple others that are sort of interesting updates of Cinderella. This one is Slenderella and her fairy hogfather, and the main character is a pig. And, she... So it's really cute, but there's all kinds of jokes in there about... They make fun of her for being... they make fun of her for being kind of fat and dirty. And what's funny is that pigs are supposed to be dirty, right? And so I think one of the things they make fun of her for is if she's not dirty enough, So it's kind of opposite of that. But you can kind of see the little pictures where she's trying to help her sisters get dressed. But it's just cute. It's just a little retelling with pigs. I have this one, Cinder Edna, and she is a sensible girl, and the slipper is a penny loafer that has a penny in it. So it follows the tail, the path, I guess you could say, of two friends. They were next door neighbors, and there was Cinderella, and then there was Edna, Cinder Edna. It says the other girl was also forced to work for her wicked stepmother and stepsisters, but she sang and whistled while she worked. Moreover, she had learned a thing or two from doing all that housework, such as how to make a tuna casserole 16 different ways, and how to get spots off everything from rugs to ladybugs. So you have these two girls who live next door to each other, and their lives take different paths because of their attitudes, right? So they're both mistreated. One is all, I wish I could go to the ball. I wish I could get pretty dresses. I wish I could do makeup and be with boys. And the other one is much more sensible. So it shows her, it shows Cinderella getting the pumpkin carriage and getting all the mice who are going to be her coachmen. And then it shows Cinder, because Cinder Edna was practical, she took the bus. She took the bus to the party, the ball, right? And so it shows Cinderella not having a good time, like, because she was too nervous and all dressed up and didn't want to mess everything up. And then Cinder Edna meets a guy and they dance all night because she was wearing comfortable shoes and she wasn't self-conscious and she had a good attitude. Anyway, the whole thing is about, is Cinderella's fate, is what she's wishing for, is going to the ball, meeting the prince, all of that. Is that really something you should want out of life? Is that really a practical dream? And so it shows her at the end. She's miserable, right? She's miserable. She's got all her finery and she's all pretty and stuff. But she's miserable in her life. And then you've got Cinder Edna, and it says, guess who lived happily ever after? And she's got her and her cute nerdy husband in their book and their cat, and it's just a really fun, like, it's kind of an interesting message. I'm not really sure who the audience for this book is. Because it's a picture book, you think, oh, it's for little kids, little girls, and I can totally see how this is a message that an artist and a picture book author would want to send to little girls. Kind of like how Beauty and the Beast started out as a message toward young women back in the 1700s. This one seems like it's also a message towards young women to, like, there are more important things to wish for than a prince and a ball and pretty dresses, right? But I don't know that a young reader could appreciate what, appreciate sort of the tongue-in-cheek illustrations and appreciate some of the references here. It seems like it would take a more mature reader, an adult woman, to be like, tell me about it. Like they would totally pick up on the message being put through here, how being more practical. I think a young reader, a little girl, would probably be like, that's boring. I want the prince. So maybe it would be something they would read when they were little, and then it would sink in and they would remember it when they were older. I also want to talk about this one, Prince Cinders. So there is an offshoot of the Cinderella tale type, 500. I want to say that Cinderella is 500A, and then either 500B or 501. I don't remember exactly the tale type, but it's Cinder Lad. And so it's when there is a male character who is mistreated by his relatives and must sort of endure this mistreatment and has this mistaken identity. And then eventually, in the Cinder Lad stories, he is supposed to fight to prove his courage and worthiness to gain back his title. Cinderella, all she has to do is be recognized, right? She has to sort of, the prince has to recognize that it's her, and that sort of guarantees her happily ever after. She has to look pretty and be memorable so that he'll recognize her, and that it guarantees her being reinstated to her rightful place. The Cinder Lad stories, usually the protagonist has to do some sort of a fight or a duel or task of some kind to prove his virility and prove his bravery. That's just interesting extra for free for you. So this one, Prince Cinders by Babette Cole. I saw a presentation at a conference about this book a few years ago, and it's so interesting because it really has a lot of interesting things to say about masculinity and different kinds of masculinity, and what is considered admirable, attractive masculinity versus masculinity that's like invalid and not desirable. And I don't know that I necessarily appreciate all of the messages that are in this book, but I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but it shows that this is the Prince Cinders was his name, and then these are his brothers. And you can kind of see a drastic physical difference. You know, it talks about how Prince Cinders, it says he wasn't much of a prince. He was small, spotty, scruffy, and skinny. And he had 3 big hairy brothers who were always teasing him about his looks. So it's very much sort of I guess big and hairy is considered attractive. I don't know in this book. But so the whole thing is, and he has to clean, which the way the book makes it out is that being forced to clean is emasculating because that's not a man's job, right? So in the Cinderella stories, her being forced to clean is sort of seen as, well, it's not unreasonable for a woman like that or a daughter to have to clean things. Why it's unreasonable for Cinderella to have to clean is because that's her father's house. She's a daughter of the house. She's not a servant. And so it's a class issue. She's not being treated as the class that she is. It is beneath her birth to have to clean. And then her stepmother and stepsisters put an undue amount of work on her for her position. The implication is that is not an undue amount of work to expect a servant to do, especially a female servant, but it's an undue amount of work to expect Cinderella to do because she's born higher than that. And so part of the resolution of the story is that she's restored to her true birth, right? Well, with Prince Cinders in this book, him being forced to clean is unfair because he's a boy, and that's emasculating, right? And he's already self-conscious. And look, here's a picture where he's looking at muscle magazines and he's trying to look at his muscles, and he feels very self-conscious about his muscles. So he's visited by a fairy, a girl, and she comes out of the fireplace, and she there's a lot of humorous stuff where he says, I want to be big and hairy like my brother. So she makes him into this big creature, and they realize that's not what he wanted. And so he goes to the party eventually with the brothers, and he fast forward. He meets the princess, and he leaves his jeans behind. This is what I wanted to get to. Instead of leaving his shirt, he runs right out of his jeans, which is just kind of a funny idea anyway. So he leaves his jeans behind. And so this is what the princess looks like. She's like in a leopard print outfit with her purse at the bus stop. So the princess was none other than the rich and beautiful princess. Lovely Penny is her name. So she is setting out to find the owner of these pants, these jeans. And so she has all of these men line up and try on these pants. And so that's kind of some humorous imagery. But nobody can fit them because he's so skinny, right? That's kind of the whole thing. It's his skinniness and his lack of sort of physique makes it where he's the only one. All of these big, muscular, virile men who come to try to woo her, they can't fit into the pants. And so even his brothers try. And so he's able to fit into the pants. Well, then, as soon as she finds him and he fits the pants, the tables turn. Look at this picture. There he is. All of a sudden, he's laying on bed, and she's like dressed like this slave character with this arm, and she's feeding him grapes. Like, what just happened? What just happened? She's the princess. She was sort of taking control. She was like, I'm going to find my man. I'm going to find who has these pants. As soon as she gets him, here she is. Like, he's like, yeah. She's like, the armband, that's a symbol of a concubine or a slave or whatever. And she's got grapes, and she's feeding him grapes. I just think it's funny. And then the brothers, in classic versions of fairy tales, the evil siblings are punished. In Beauty and the Beast, the sisters are turned into statues, and in Cinderella in the Grimm's version, the sisters' eyes are plucked out at the wedding. There's usually some kind of a punishment. And so this one, the punishment, the brothers who are so mean to him are turned into fairies. And it says they turn into house fairies, and they flitted around the palace doing housework forever and ever. So their literal punishment equal to being turned into a statue and given your eyes plucked out is having to do housework forever and ever. So I think it's funny, a lot of housewives would moms would be reading this book to their kids. You're like, hold on a minute. That's what I do. I do housework forever and ever. Is that a punishment? Am I being punished? So there's lots of this would be a really good paper. I know we're not reading this in this class, and I saw a paper about it at a conference a couple years ago, as I said, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's a perfect subject for scholarship. I would like to see that paper turned into like an actual article. I don't know if it has been. If it has, I haven't come across it. But it was just fascinating, the sort of gender swap that takes place in this book, and some of the implications of the punishment is having to do housework, for the brothers. Okay, the last book I'm going to show you, and I'll only show you for just a couple minutes because I know we're at the time where the class would be over pretty much. But I have to show you The Stinky Cheese Man and Other Fairly Stupid Tales. I don't know if you ever read this in school, but it is a collection of several different tales, and they are retold in sort of these quirky ways. But one of the things I'll show you is this book teaches kids how to read a book. So it has, also it's signed. John Sheska, I took Echo to meet him. He was in Nashville a few years ago, and so I took her to meet him, and we took a few of our books, and he signed it. And she had scribbled in the front, and so he drew around it and made it part of his signature, which was really sweet. And I have a really sweet picture of them together when she was 4 or 5 maybe? 4. She was little. So you have these books, these end papers that all books have, but then the text starts on it, right? The little red hen starts telling her story, and then there's the whole book is sort of, there's an MC, this Jack. He's from Jack and the Beanstalk, but he's the narrator of the whole book, and he puts the whole thing together. He's like, wait a minute, hold everything. You can't tell your story right here. This is the end paper. The book hasn't even started yet. He's like, who are you? Will you help me plant the wheat? That's the little red hen. I'm Jack. I'm the narrator. And no, I can't help you plant the wheat. I'm a very busy guy trying to put a book together. Now, why don't you just disappear for a few pages? I'll call you when I need you. Right? So it's explaining that's what the end pages are. Right? He says, here comes the title page. So then it's just called title page. For The Stinky Cheese Man and Other Fairly Stupid Tales. Then the dedication page is accidentally upside down, and he's all embarrassed. Jack's all embarrassed about it. There's an introduction. Then the first story starts, and it's Chicken Little, and there's a number 12 has fallen out of the sky. And, with Chicken Little, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. And so the whole thing ends up being that what was falling was the table of contents. So the table of contents falls on them. Right, and so that's what was actually falling. And this story down here that fell off of the table of contents onto the page, it's not actually, all of these are in the book, but this one's not. I think that's clever. So throughout the whole book, you have these various retellings of fairy tales. And you have the Jack who's kind of, okay, yeah, for our next story, we're going to do this, And the giant is sort of chasing him throughout a couple of the stories, and he's running from him. And so at the end of the Stinky Cheese Man story, you have one of these. So we have been told at the beginning, this is the end paper. This is what the end paper looks like. The little red hen started talking too early. This is what the end paper looks like. So you think you've learned the book is over, right? So then it flips, and it's you see the giant. He's like, shh. Be very quiet. I moved the end paper up here so the giant would think the book is over. The big lug is finally asleep. Now I can just sneak out of here. Just turn the page very quietly, and that will be and he's going to say the end. And then when you turn it, the little red hen starts screaming. I found the wheat. I planted the wheat. I grew the wheat. I harvested the wheat. And it wakes the giant up, right? And so Jack's like, come on. And so then it really is the end after that, and you have the real sort of end paper and all at the end. So I really love this book because it's a book that knows it's a book, right? It talks about, the title page comes in and the table of contents falls in and the dedication page is upside down, and like Jack is talking about all the stories flowing in order. Even on the back is a little red hen pointing at the USBN. What is this doing here? This is ugly. Who is this ISBN guy? Who will buy this book anyway? Over 50 pages of nonsense and I'm only in 3 of them. Blah, 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 blah. So it's like even acknowledging the ISBN on the back. So I just think this is just a genius achievement in picture book design, with the sort of meta awareness. This is sort of Jack, the narrator of this book, is sort of like the Deadpool of children's books, where he kind of talks to the reader, talks to the characters, gets exasperated when things don't go right. Is very much aware that he's a character in a book and that he's putting a book together as it's being read. So anyway, if you ever come to my office and visit me, I have a little stuffed animal version of the Stinky Cheese Man. It's actually a little puppet because you can stick your fingers in the backs of his legs and make him run, because instead of the gingerbread man, he's the Stinky Cheese Man. And so you can make him run. So if you ever come by my office, you'll have to say, "Where's the Stinky Cheese Man?" He's up on my shelf in my office. So, because I wanted to sneak this one in because it's not about any particular tale that I wanted to show you, but this is my favorite picture book of all time, The Stinky Cheese Man. And so it is about fairy tales, so I thought I would sneak it in. Okay, so we talked about Beauty and the Beast. We talked about Snow White. We talked about Hansel and Gretel. We talked about Sleeping Beauty and Cinderella. I think that's all the ones we did. So we covered quite a bit. Those obviously are not the only tales that exist. I did not talk about Little Red Riding Hood, for example. I have some versions of that, but I just didn't talk about that. I didn't talk about like Rumpelstiltskin is another one. There are sort of classic sort of folk tales that I don't know if you'd count as fairy tales, but like The Ugly Duckling and the Gingerbread Man and Goldilocks, Three Little Pigs. There's some debate about whether if those are just folk tales or if they count as fairy tales, which we talked about in class, that fairy tales are just imaginative stories, usually containing magic meant for children. The meant for children part's up for debate, which we've already talked about. So there's lots of different tales that I didn't discuss, but I wanted to kind of show you where fairy tale adaptations for young readers have where we are now, like where we've come. And all of these are the result of the post-1970s emergence of children's literature scholarship, where sort of the floodgates opened of people experimenting with these characters, experimenting with the settings, experimenting with the art style, making updated, beautiful versions, making cartoony, comedic versions, playing with the dialogue, playing with the endings, as we saw with the 5-minute Snow White, where the queen goes and lives with the dwarfs. Kind of like how it ended up with teenagers and adults with sort of experimenting and retelling the stories. The kids' versions are just as experimental and just as all over the place. And so I wanted to spend this video in this class period showing you some examples of how that works. Sorry I didn't get to everything that I own, but as you see, this video is already the length of one of our classes. So this is a good time to end it. If you have any questions or need help with anything that you're working on, definitely get in touch with me. Until then, I look forward to reading your reading responses, and I will see you later. Bye.